All offseason, I've been dropping Mock Draft Monday episodes for you to judge, but this week, I'm going to do the judging. We got multiple mock drafts from experts around the media circle that I'm going to put grades on. That coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, David Harrison, here with you Monday through Friday, your friend, your eyes, your ears on the ground, covering the Washington Commanders and doing so for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. Also helping out with WUSA9.com's local coverage of the team, your local DC CBS affiliate. I want to thank you for coming through for today's episode. In this episode, it's Mock Draft Monday, one of our last few Mock Draft Mondays before the 2025 NFL Draft arrives. So we're going to start to have a little bit more fun with these things before we lay down our final official mock draft for the year, the one that I claim to think is going to be exactly what Adam Peters does, and surely he will do exactly that. All off season long, I've been dropping mock drafts for you to judge and to tell me where I'm right, to tell me where I'm wrong. Well, today we're going to turn the table a little bit. I got mock drafts from multiple people around the media landscape that they dropped. I'm going to judge them, and then you can judge me and how I judge them. That's what we're going to do in today's episode. Every day, those of you who come through every day, I want to thank you for being the best part of this program. And for everybody out there, if you haven't already subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this episode right now, please do so. And if you're new to the show, thanks for finding it. Hopefully you like what you see, or you like what you hear, or both, and you come back again soon. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Of course, Locked On Commanders is a daily podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today, Mock Draft Monday. We are in April. It is NFL Draft Month. So these things are going to get a little bit more realistic focus, realistically based. The rosters are pretty much all but set. I think there's one big move out there. The Tre Harris situation with the Cincinnati Bengals is kind of holding over everybody's head if you're a team or a fan of a team or a media member covering a team that needs edge help. And of course, the reality of the situation is that the Cincinnati Bengals may not get anything done until draft night, and that could include a draft night trade, or they could just not get anything done all draft weekend. We'll be talking about it, and then into the rest of the offseason, not us, but Cincinnati Bengals potentially. So that's the situation that we find ourselves in. Every pick in the NFL draft could fail, right? So that is the ultimate truth of the NFL draft. Every pick could fail. Every pick could succeed. You find a Hall of Famer in the 6th round. You can find a complete bust in the 1st round, and no general manager is immune to all of the different ramifications and potentials and everything in between. So the thing I really dislike about grades, and everydayers, you've kind of probably already heard me lament or talk about this from time to time. The thing I really don't like about grades is that we can't really tell you, no matter how smart we think we are, can't really tell you how effective a player is actually going to be until they get on the field. And even then, I've seen players have really rough rookie mini camps end up being really good players in the National Football League. So it's a continuous process, right? So grades really, for me, essentially tells you whether the person giving the grade agrees with the move or disagrees with the move, how much they agree with the move, how much they disagree with the move. So I want to lay that basis out here very, very well, because I am going to grade these mock drafts that I pulled for this episode, but I want to do it in a very clear focus. I'm not telling you that this player is not going to be good or won't be good or wouldn't ever be good or will never be good or anything like that. If I give a pick anything less than an A, it's not that I think that player is just not going to make it in the NFL. It's that there are red flags that I think could potentially derail the potential for the player to be successful in the NFL. So breaking this down, an A from me would be no questions asked, projects greatly, doesn't appear to be any concerns or issues that you would have to overly worry about. Again, doesn't guarantee success. It just means as a draft profile, as a draft evaluation at this point, from the way that I see it, doesn't present any big red flags. B would basically be that there's one single red flag that otherwise the player projects well. But with that red flag, if that red flag becomes a true problem in the NFL, could derail that potential. C, you're essentially a boom or bust guy. 2 or more red flags where I'd look at you and I say, this dude's probably either going to be really great or out of the league, or at least off this team in probably the next 3 years. D, I don't think you're likely to work out for the Washington Commanders. Sorry. Hopefully you go somewhere else and you do well. F, ain't no way that's working. Spoiler alert, there's no Fs. Okay. And it's great, but I wanted to go through the list anyway. So we're going to start this off with an NFL.com mock draft. Maurice Jones-Drew, retired NFL running back, former Jacksonville Jaguar. Honestly, not sure if he played for any other teams, but I know he played for the Jags for quite a while. That's where I know him from. NFL.com, he decided to do a mock draft. It's his first of the entire season, so he finally jumped into the pool. I don't know if he's doing any others. I just know he did one. And in that mock draft, number 29, he has the Washington Commanders selecting cornerback Azareye'h Thomas out of Florida State. And Azareye'h Thomas is a player that we've talked about before on this show. So every day, if you've seen every mock draft or heard every mock draft, you know that this is a name that we've talked about before. Now, MJD in his mock draft says, quote, the Commanders select a long, rangy cornerback who can disrupt the passing game. Thomas has plenty of room to grow, but he possesses the tools and physicality to thrive under Dan Quinn, end quote. Thomas is 6'1.5", 197 pounds. His key stat, 2 interceptions in 3 years at Florida State. It's not a lot of ball production. Scouting report, this is just a compilation from what I've seen, but also other draft experts who have probably watched more tape than I have in a long time. Press man corner with good length and solid NFL speed. Physical at the release, at his best when playing at the line of scrimmage. Good usage of his physical attributes to win otherwise losable reps. Improved as a run defender in 2024 with more room to grow. So that's my thoughts on Azareye'h Thomas, cornerback out of Florida State. His depth chart projection, I think he comes in, he's immediately your favorite to be your number 2 perimeter cornerback. I think Marshawn Lattimore is on one side. Azareye'h Thomas you probably have on the other side. Mikey Sanders still then moves inside with any type of high draft pick. I think first, second round. I think if you have a cornerback, a perimeter cornerback in the first or second round, I think it's a pretty clear indication the Washington Commanders are hoping to be able to move Mikey Sanders still back inside. Of course, that would depend on that rookie being able to come in and be able to at least hold his own so they can put him out there and trust that he's going to develop as the season goes. Mikey moves back inside. Marshawn Lattimore gets a full off season with the team to get ready to be that number 1 cornerback that they traded for at the 2024 NFL deadline. My grade for Azareye'h Thomas, I'm giving him an A. Every player has a little bit of something to develop in, right? No player's going to come in perfect. So I don't give it A grade saying that this dude's just perfect, day 1 starter, no issues, never going to have a problem. No, that's just not realistic. But when you want to look at a player who has the right combination of ability, athleticism, and the personality to play in a Joe Witt Jr., Dan Quinn, Washington Commanders defense, I think Azareye'h Thomas is about as good as it gets. I also am a fan of guys like Tre Harris. There's some other guys on the board that I kind of just look at and say, like, you fit the mold of what I think a Commander is when I hear Adam Peters, Dan Quinn's coaching staff talk about that. Azareye'h Thomas, absolutely one of those guys, cornerback out of Florida State. So Maurice Jones-Drew, 1 attempt at mock drafting. As far as the Commanders are concerned, in my opinion, nailed it with his first and so far only mock draft of the offseason. So that's how we're going to do this thing. We're going to continue to move forward. We got about 3 or 4 other mock drafts that we're going to break down, go over the picks, and I'm going to tell you about what I think about each of them and grade them, including a 5-round mock staying at NFL.com from Chad Reuter. That kind of misses the mark a little bit. So we'll get into that here coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you in part by TurboTax, and this message is from a sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes used to be waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Well, now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find your every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worrying. Now, this is taxes. So get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax live full service real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Today's episode of Locked On Commanders is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, random subscriptions that you forgot you had. It's easy to lose track. Well, that's where Monarch Money can come in, because they're your personal chief financial officer, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, however. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money, start building your wealth. I started using Monarch Money myself last month. It helped me budget the money that I needed for a big trip to Florida for me, to work the NFL annual league meetings for my family, brought 6 other people in my family to Florida for them. It was a vacation. It helped us budget it, helped us prepare, track during the trip, get back, and we end up having a little bit of money left over compared to what we thought we would spend, all thanks to our help with Monarch Money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. Continuing on now, today's episode of Locked On Commanders Mock Draft Monday. Instead of myself dropping a mock draft for you to grade, analyze, punish, and praise, I'm going to do the grading, analyzing, punishing, and praising of some other people's mock drafts, specifically Maurice Jones-Drew of NFL.com, who dropped his first mock draft of the offseason recently, maybe his last. He took Florida State cornerback Azareye'h Thomas for the Washington Commanders, number 29. I give that an A. Now we're going to turn our page to Chad Reuter. We're staying at NFL.com, but Chad Reuter dropped a 5-rounder, which is always amazing. I always love looking at those types of mock drafts. I really love the in-depth stuff and some of these things. Now, with the Washington Commanders, of course, no third, no fifth, sorry. So we still have a smaller class to look at here, but I figured this portion of the show was a really good time to take a look at what Chad did. I'm going to tell you right now, to me, kind of misses the mark a little bit, but I know some of you are going to love some of these picks because we've been having this discussion all off season long. It's going to start right at number 29, edge rusher Mike Green out of Marshall, 6'3", 251-pound edge rusher. Reuter writes, quote, while Green chose not to run the 40-yard dash at the NFL Scouting Combine and his pro day, the quickness he displayed during his career at Marshall should be exactly what head coach Dan Quinn is looking to add, end quote. Key stat for Marshall, or for Green, 17 sacks in 2024, 22 and a half in 3 total seasons. The scouting report on Green looks like this: super productive in his final year, plays with a high motor, looks comfortable as a pass rusher with a solid arsenal of counters to defeat blockers, incredibly physical defender with the ability to be effective inside and out with good change of direction when needed, closes in the backfield fast enough to make you forget he's not as long as typically desired. That scouting report, look at it. The depth chart projection, I think probably you look at him to challenge for that number 1 spot opposite Dorrance Armstrong Jr., challenge Cleveland Farrell, challenge Dietrich Wise, and at least be a part of that rotation, but potentially be the first guy on the field in that rotation. The grade I'm going to give it is a B. Why? The same hang up I've had with him all season long is that he has 2 situations where he faced off-field sexual assault allegations, one stemming from high school, one stemming from college. Now, he did address those at the scouting combine. He's mentioned he's never been accused or charged officially. He's never been even interviewed for them because I'm not sure about the high school one, but I know the college one was an anonymous report. Therefore, there's no interviewing and all that stuff, that kind of stuff going on. The fact that it's happening is a concern to me, especially with the way the NFL handles this. You get accused of this in the NFL. I know some people don't think it's fair. Due process, all that stuff. Not going to get into that conversation here, but the bottom line is you get accused of this kind of stuff, there's a potential for you to be forced to miss time. Whether it's wrong or right is up to a whole other debate that we're not going to have on this program today. So that is a red flag for me. That is a situation I think the Washington Commanders have to be able to reckon with. Obviously, they're going to have more time to talk to them behind the scenes if they decide to do so and all those things. So that'll be something for them to deal with, not me. But that is a red flag that we at least need to be able to acknowledge. So again, this is a 5-rounder from Chad Reuter. So in the second round, the Washington Commanders come back at number 61, and they get wide receiver Tre Harris out of Ole Miss. 6'2", 205-pound wide receiver. His key stat, 3 straight 900-plus yard receiving seasons, playing no more than 12 games in each one. That's a lot of production and not a lot of games, relatively speaking. Scouting report on Tre Harris, good blend of size and speed, works well in short and long yardage environments with a varied route tree, fast enough, 4.5, 4.40, to gain solid yards after catch, and has shown improved ability to make catches when contested throughout his collegiate career. Did play just 8 games each of the past 2 years due to injury, but has plenty of potential in his system where he isn't expected to be a primary receiver right away. Depth chart projection for Tre Harris, I think honestly, even as a rookie, might just be able to challenge Noah Brown to get on the field third behind Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, who are obviously going to kind of have more solidified roles in the offense. There could even be situations where Tre and Terry and Noah are on the field at the same time. But I think he comes in ahead of Luke McCaffrey, but potentially competing with a veteran like Noah Brown there. I give this grade a B. The only reason I give it a B is because he does have that injury history over the last 2 years that is a little bit concerning, but not enough to drop him to like a C or anything like that. In fact, if I did A minuses, I might even do an A minus on there, but I don't do pluses and minuses. I just don't. Fourth round pick, number 128, cornerback Jason Marshall Jr. out of Florida, 6 foot, 194 pound corner. His key stat, 2 career interceptions, none in the past 2 seasons. So both of his career interceptions in college came in his first 2 years. He's had none in the past 2 years of college football. Scouting report on him, 4.49 speed corner with good size, experience, and athleticism despite a lack of production. Plays well from press and carries receivers well downfield. Not the greatest tackler, and lack of ball production comes largely from dropped or missed opportunities. So the opportunities for him to have some interceptions there. Just didn't capitalize on all of them, and not the greatest tackler. Again, tackling is not going to be a primary responsibility for a cornerback anyway, but it is something because the more we go, the more teams attack the perimeter, the more your defensive backs need to at least be, relevant in run defense, if not, great run defenders. Depth chart projection, I think in this situation, you look at an edge in the first round receiver, I think he's a guy who can come in and compete. You know what I mean? I don't think you would pencil him in as a starting perimeter corner, but along with guys like Noah Igbenogany and all the other guys that the Washington Commanders brought in this offseason, returning guys like Marshawn Lattimore, I think you just put him in the mix there. You see which combination comes out the best. So not a guy that I would say is just a bench rider, but certainly 4th round pick. You're not just going to come in and pencil him in as a starter. Certainly has upside, but again, so there are some concerns there. Grade overall is a C, lack of tackling, drops in covers. There's a perceived lack of urgency on the field as well, but I don't hard grade lack of effort perception just because things can be a little bit convoluted there. And I think the team needs to be able to interview those guys themselves. Overall, the grade gets a 2.7, right? If you give a 3 out of 4 on the grade, GPA scale for Mike Green, a 3 for Tre Harris, and a 2 for Jason Marshall, you end up with a 2.7, which is like a low C plus range grade there for Chad Reuter's 5-rounder on NFL.com. That's our longest mock draft of the bunch. We've got a couple of unique ones. We got a fan favorite mock. We've got an AI mock that we're going to look at here to wrap up this Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up this week's Mock Draft Monday episode of Locked On Commanders, we're going to do a few interesting little mock drafts here, starting off with Pro Football Focus running their fan favorite mock draft. The way the Pro Football Focus did this is if you use the mock draft simulator, it tracks every single, if you draft for the Commanders on the mock draft simulator, it tracks every single Commanders draft pick made in the first round and the 7th round, everything in between. And basically what PFF did is they took all that data and they said, well, if the NFL draft goes the way that the fan favorite picks go, here's what it'll look like. When you get to number 29 to the Washington Commanders, they end up with linebacker Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. 6'5" linebacker, 235 pounds. Key stat for him, 5.5 sacks and 183 tackles in the past 2 seasons. That's a lot of tackles for a college defender. Scouting report on him. Hybrid linebacker, edge rusher who can contribute in either area right away. Doesn't display great instincts, which lends the needle towards the edge, but does have the athleticism to make up for lost ground when playing off ball. Great range and solid open field tackler. Can blitz from off ball as well. Best used as a force element to maximize his athleticism while minimizing the drop in his read and react ability. Force element basically meaning he's on assignment, he's going to hit this gap, or he's going to go here. You're not going to make him think a whole lot. You're going to tell him, here's what you're doing, depending on whether it's run or pass, and then you're just going to go out there and do it and use that athleticism. Depth chart projection, obviously, even as a first-round draft pick, you're coming in behind Bobby Wagner, or you're coming in to try to contribute as a role-playing edge rusher, pass rushing specialist, things like that. So you're just looking at kind of a Swiss Army knife way of using a guy. The grade, I'm going to give it a B, but it depends on the intent, right? The lack of instincts for an off-ball linebacker is concerning. If he's just going to be part of the rotation as a pass rusher, I mean, you might give him an A, right? But for right now, I'm going to give him a B just because I don't know exactly where they would envision him. However, what's interesting about this mock draft is while this is a fan favorite mock draft, Jahad Campbell is not actually the number one choice made at number 29 by Commanders, by people using the Commanders. And I don't say fans because I know there are more than just myself in the media who also uses the PFF mock draft simulator. The top choice, though, overall is actually running back Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina, 6 foot tall running back, 221 pounds. Key stat for Hampton, has back-to-back 1,500 rushing yard, 15 rushing touchdown seasons in North Carolina, just 13 and 12 games in each. Just a whole lot of production in not a whole lot of games. Scouting report on him: has the size, strength, and competitive energy to succeed in the NFL. Lacks creativity as a rusher, but he gets downhill like a Mack truck with no brakes. Good base and balance, punishes would-be tacklers, but isn't going to miss many of them. Pass protection is a work in progress, but he has the proven ability to be a pass catcher. Looks confident when getting a lot of work, but he has had a lot of work in college. Depth chart projection: I think in the NFL draft, I think honestly, you probably look at him to be a challenger potentially to Brian Robinson. I mean, I think there's a reason to believe that he could potentially come in here and be the primary back by the time you get to the end of training camp, very similarly to the way that Brian Robinson himself did. The grade, I'm going to give it an A as a rookie, but a B as a long-term project because of his pass pro. Look, he's a willing pass protector. Like, if he's there where the pass rusher is coming, he will do his job. Where the lack of consistency comes in a lot of times is reading blitzes, picking them up the right angle, getting to the right spot. And that's going to be a concern in the NFL because defensive coordinators can confuse the crap out of anybody. There are concerns about his running style and his health, right? Long-term health with running backs is always a concern. So, combine all that stuff, I'm going to give him an A as a rookie because I think immediately there's a clear path to him having an impact. But long-term, kind of looking at B. Second choice for the Washington Commanders, according to these mock draft history, James Pierce, edge rusher out of Tennessee. I would give that a C. We've talked about this before every day, if you've been here. Attitude concerns on the field within the team, needs to bulk up to stick in the NFL, and I don't know what that's going to do to his speed off the ball and through the gap or around the edge. Not a large resume of technical ability. He's just kind of a dude who wins because he's more athletic than the guy playing across from him. And I would much rather see the technical ability if possible. Third choice, Nick Scorton, edge rusher out of Texas A&M. I would give that grade a B. There's a suspicious lack of production at Texas A&M, where he only had 5 sacks after leaving Purdue with 10 sacks the year prior. Fourth choice, Shamar Stewart, another edge rusher out of Texas A&M. I would also give that a B. He's got all the tools, but only 4.5 career sacks. That lack of production, despite the tools, is concerning. Fifth choice, Luther Burden, the third wide receiver out of Missouri. I'd actually give that an A. Potential B grade for perceived lax attitude on the field. But again, it's hard to quantify. Just watch him. You might see him jogging. Great. But you don't know why he's jogging. You don't know the context. The team has the ability to interview guys like that and get all those details. So I leave those to them. So A or B, just kind of depending on where you sit on the lax attitude on the field. So PFF, very interesting version of a mock draft. They're using your data, my data, all of our data, if you've been using the PFF mock draft simulator to kind of do their mock draft. So very interesting over there. USA Today, steering into the AI trend, used Meta AI to do a mock draft. At number 29, the Washington Commanders ended up with edge rusher Princely Uman-Milan out of Ole Miss. Not a guy that we've talked about, especially in the first round here on Locked On Commanders. USA Today wrote, quote, the chat bot was sold on his combination of experience and physical ability, end quote. So basically acknowledging this isn't a first round guy, but he's being mocked here in the first round. So who is Princely Uman-Milan? 6'4", 244 pounds. Key stat for him, 15 sacks in 4 years at Florida before transferring to Ole Miss, where he had 10.5 sacks just last season. That's a great uptick in production. Scouting report on Uman-Milan. Good traits to match his production, good burst, long strider, gets in the pocket quickly, but lacks a plan when he gets held up. Not the strongest and lacks bite and run defense. Solid first-year pass rushing specialist with upside who will need to become a better run defender to play every down. Depth chart projection, pretty much just heard it there. He's going to be a rotational pass rusher, not going to be a starter. Kind of sounds to me like a less effective run-stopping Cleveland Farrell, who's a better pass rusher, which basically is just not Cleveland Farrell. But anyway, depth chart guy again, rotational pass rusher, not a day one guy. I give the grade a C. Lacks run defense, lacks the ability to set the edge. We already saw that a lot with the Washington Commanders. Now as a project, and again, you see him on like day 2, something like that. You can swallow that a little bit better. But as far as the number 29 overall guy, not going to happen. 33rd team, James Foster. He came through with a mock draft, number 29. He did take running back Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. Said, quote, Washington selects Omarion Hampton, a sturdy downhill runner with excellent contact balance. Hampton has reliable hands as a brick wall and pass protection. His vision and creativity are average, but he does a good job getting north and south and churning out tough yards, end quote. So again, like I said, lacks creativity, looks to get north and south. I use the analogy of a Mack truck without brakes. Brick wall and pass protection. Like I said, if he's willing, right, just doesn't do a great job all the time of reading where the blitz is coming from. Again, the grade on that, an A is a rookie, B is a long-term option, depending on how the rest of that stuff develops. So handful of mock drafts here, gave out some decent grades, nothing lower than a C. So no D's, no F's here from these mock drafts. Maurice Jones-Drew comes through with an A, and none of you get to criticize my mock draft, but you do get to criticize my grades on the mock draft. I know some of you guys love you some Mike Green and think that unfounded accusations are not going to matter. I feel like with this team, they're going to matter a little bit. We don't, never know. I think the traits for Mike Green specifically are amazing. And if they talk to Mike Green or they talked to Mike Green and they feel satisfied with that answer, certainly would not have any problem with him being on the field for the Commanders from a talent aspect. I like to call it the Madden effect, right? This is Madden and none of that stuff exists or is real. Absolutely. Mike Green is one of the best talents in this year's NFL draft class, but that's the kind of player that we sometimes differ on. So let me know your thoughts on that. Make sure you come back for our next episode of Locked On Commanders. I did miss one episode last week. It was promised to be a second mailbag episode. Driving back from Florida, Friday was also my 22nd wedding anniversary. Then we had some family things come up this weekend and just ultimately deterred me from being able to get that out to you. So tomorrow, pending any major news, probably going to knock out that second mailbag from last week, and then that'll lead us into our original mailbag every week, which is Wednesday. So if you got questions or comments, you want to get into that mailbag episode, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders Insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. From there, you're going to be able to text me. I'm going to text you. It's a good time, fun time had by all, and I appreciate everybody who's become an insider. We continue to have insiders join during the offseason. I love it. You're going to get much more out of it during the season, but I love those of you who are sticking around for the offseason, those of you joining in the offseason. Hopefully you're getting enough out of it as well during this time period. For the next listen, make Locked On NFL Draft. That next listen, Damian Parson, Keith Sanchez are going to help you get ready for the NFL Draft every single day. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Everydayers, thanks for coming through every day. For everybody out there, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, so I can see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.